Hello, everyone. I wish I could hear you back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. No matter what part of the world you're joining us from, welcome. Welcome to AI Diet World 2021, the premier B2B event of the year, celebrating ethics for people, companies, and products. Where DIET stands for data and diversity, inclusion and impact, ethics and equity. Oh, my team is saying they can't hear. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, everyone? Where DIET stands for data and diversity, inclusion and impact, ethics and equity, teams and technology. Let's build a better AI world together that is cognitive, diverse, and inclusive in every way. And with that, I would like to welcome our first guest, Christina Montgomery. Christina Montgomery is IBM's Chief Privacy Officer and an IBM Vice President. As Chief Privacy Officer, Christina oversees IBM's privacy program, compliance, and strategy on a global basis and directs all aspects of IBM's privacy policies. She also co-chairs IBM's AI Ethics Board, a multidisciplinary team responsible for the governance and decision-making process for AI ethics policies and practices. Prior to her current role, Christina provided legal support for many of IBM's divisions, including spending more than 4 years as secretary to IBM's board of directors. Ms. Montgomery received a BA from Brigham University and a JD from Harvard Law School. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker for AI Diet World 2021, Christina Montgomery. Woohoo! And with that, let me welcome Christina to the stream. Hey, Christina, welcome.
Hi, Shilpi. Thanks so much for having me today.
Our pleasure, and thank you for being here. I know my team said that they couldn't hear me. Was the intro okay? Everyone could hear it?
I heard you fine.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to go backstage, and the stage is all yours, Christina. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Shilpi, and thanks for everybody who took the time out of your day to join us today. Today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of trust and why trust is so important with respect to AI. So if you're attending this event, you are well aware of how pervasive AI is becoming in our daily lives. It's spread across all industries. It's become embedded in everyday business. In fact, 3 out of 4 businesses are exploring or implementing AI, and there's a significant amount of investment that businesses are putting into AI. A key reason for the increasing use of AI is the growing amount of data, the massive amounts of it, structured and unstructured, that's being generated from businesses and individuals every day. From an expanding set of applications like websites and mobile apps and devices like wearables or appliances, connected cars, manufacturing equipment, cameras, the list goes on and on. A recent survey found that most businesses use more than 20 different data sources to inform their AI, and large businesses sometimes tap into 500 or more data sources. So considering all of this information and the means to connect, process, and uncover insights from it, it's easy to see that AI is changing the way we do business. But the effect of AI goes beyond business applications. AI is opening the door to create innovative solutions with the potential to solve some of society's biggest challenges. For example, using AI to analyze data, researchers at IBM and the Michael J. Fox Foundation developed an AI model that predicts the progression of symptoms in Parkinson's patients in terms of both the timing and the severity. Manavox, A nonprofit based in Paris built a platform with IBM that uses AI to scour information from trusted sources, to monitor the world's forests and the rate of deforestation, and to act on those insights before further damage is done. And finally, working with the United Nations Environment Program and the Wilson Center, IBM has demonstrated how digital technologies can help to monitor marine pollution and fundamentally change how data analysis and insight are accessed to enable more informed decision-making. AI enables organizations to implement global strategies around big picture issues. For example, IBM's newly released Environmental Intelligence Suite allows organizations to plan for and respond to disruptive events like weather to avoid outages and ensure business continuity in real time with their operations around the world. It's powered by AI that integrates weather data with business operations. That augments decision-making with enterprise processes to address sustainability, resiliency, and climate change challenges. Innovative solutions like this demonstrate that new technologies like AI can play a critical role in helping address important issues in today's world. But AI presents some unique challenges. First, AI, as we mentioned, is made possible by vast amounts of data collected every day. But often there's a lack of transparency around data collection. It can be unclear to consumers who has access to their data and how it's being used and protected, even what data is being collected. Second, there's a pacing problem around new technologies like AI. In some cases, new technologies are being created and put into use so quickly that regulation can't keep up. That leaves it to companies and governments to impose their own guardrails around technology development, deployment, and use. The combination of these factors presents the very real risk of eroding public trust around technology. And if society doesn't trust the technology, we won't see it being used and deployed, stifling innovation. For these reasons, it's essential that we lay a foundation today that ensures new technologies put people first and that their benefits are felt broadly across society. So at IBM, we align ourselves to what we call our principles for trust and transparency. At a high level, these are that AI should augment, not replace human intelligence, that data and the insights generated from that data belong to their creator. In our case, that's our clients. And that new technologies, including AI, should be transparent and explainable. We impose firm guardrails on our own use of technology and data, and we advocate for others to do the same through concrete, actionable policy recommendations. Having a set of principles is one thing, though. The real trick is operationalizing them, and you have to work to infuse them in your practices across the company. Essentially, your values must be your practices. We align our practices around the principles I mentioned earlier and a set of pillars around AI ethics, the fundamental properties we view required for trustworthy AI. The pillars provide an intentional framework for establishing an ethical foundation for building and using AI systems. And they'll be familiar to many of you. They are explainability, fairness, robustness, transparency, and privacy. And the principles and the pillars together demonstrate IBM's longstanding commitment to taking an ethically conscious approach when bringing new technologies into the world. And we embed ethical thinking throughout IBM via the AI Ethics Board, which I co-chair along with the IBM AI Ethics Global Leader, Francesca Rossi. IBM's AI Ethics Board infuses the company's principles and ethical thinking into business and product decision-making. It provides centralized governance and support and accountability while still being flexible enough to support decentralized initiatives across our global operations. And that's no small thing when you remember we have about 340,000 employees operating in 170 countries plus around the globe. The board provides two-way engagement, promotes best practices, conducts internal education, and leads our participation with stakeholder groups worldwide. But in addition to the board, we have a network of AI focal points, and these are embedded throughout the business. The focal points help ensure that our approach to AI ethics is both tops down and bottoms up, instilling a culture of trustworthy AI throughout IBM. The board and its associated governance are just one of the ways that we embed trust in our operations at IBM. They're a mechanism by which we hold our company and all IBMers accountable to our values and our commitments to the ethical development and deployment of technology. But no company can do this alone, so we advocate for policies that are consistent with those values. We've been very public in our positions, for example, to firmly oppose the use of technologies, including facial recognition technology, for mass surveillance, racial profiling, and violation of basic human rights and freedoms. In fact, really any purpose that's inconsistent with the principles of trust and transparency that I mentioned earlier. When our CEO, Arvind Krishna, announced that we would no longer offer general purpose facial recognition software products, we were the first major tech company to do so, and others soon followed. We also partner with leading minds around the world to advance important ethical dialogues. The efforts we've seen at a global level, from the EU high-level expert group on AI to the Vatican's Rome call for AI ethics, are laying a clear path for AI that's deployed responsibly and ethically. And they're all efforts where IBM has played a leading role. Last year, we partnered with the University of Notre Dame to establish the Notre Dame IBM Tech Ethics Lab. It's a first-of-a-kind cross-disciplinary research initiative focused entirely on driving best practices in technology and AI ethics and in shaping relevant public policy. And our CEO is co-chairing the World Economic Forum's Global AI Action Alliance, a platform that's focused on moving beyond principles, one that will convene multi-stakeholder dialogues, engage in real-time learning, and help scale best practices, all in support of trustworthy AI. As part of that alliance, we've committed to sharing our governance approach to AI ethics, those concrete steps that we take as a company, and we're hoping that that will help guide best practices in the space as well. Internally, we've launched toolkits like AI Fairness 360 to help customers and other organizations check for and mitigate bias in AI systems, and AI Explainability 360 to help explain a system's decision-making process. Most recently, IBM Research unveiled a toolkit called Uncertainty Quantification 360 that helps developers and data scientists quantify the uncertainty of machine learning predictions with the goal of improving transparency and trust in AI. And recognizing that the challenges of AI bias and explainability are bigger than any one organization can tackle independently, we contributed these tools to the open source community so that anyone can use them and improve upon them. Along with working with outside organizations and providing open source tools, as a company, we advocate for responsible technology policies with policymakers around the world. In addition to our position on facial recognition, we've called publicly for governments to strengthen trust in technology in a number of areas. For example, we support a strong and bipartisan national consumer privacy law in the United States, not a patchwork of different rules at each state level. So privacy protection shouldn't vary based on where someone lives or from where you access the internet in the United States. The framework should be flexible enough for organizations to implement while driving accountability. I'm sorry, I'm seeing some in the chat. Can people hear? Shilpi, should I stop or?
You're fine, Christina. People can hear.
Okay, great. Sorry, I saw the text traffic. On the AI front, we've called for precision regulation of AI. So this is, essentially a call to place the tightest regulatory and policy controls on technology end uses where the risk of societal harm is the greatest. In other words, regulate the use of AI, not the technology itself. And in addition, we're calling on governments to help strengthen the adoption of testing, assessment, and mitigation strategies to minimize instances of bias in AI systems. New laws, regulatory frameworks, and guidance for mitigating bias in AI systems are on the horizon. And if well crafted, these measures can provide industry and organizations with clear testing, assessment, mitigation, and education requirements to enhance consumer confidence and trust in AI. I firmly believe that we can change the world with technology, but we have an obligation to do so responsibly. We take that obligation seriously at IBM. And we've been a responsible steward of new technologies for more than 100 years. With the rapid pace of technology development, it's even more important that we hold firm to our values embed them in our practices, and advocate for policies that align with them. We consider trust our license to operate, and it's incumbent upon us to continue embedding trust in all we do as we create and use these technologies to build a better and more prosperous future. Thanks for your time today, and I believe we have a little bit time for Q&A.
Thank you, Christina. Great talk. Yes, we do have a few questions coming in. Audience, we are ready for your questions. So, Christina, I love that you said that, yes, with great responsibility, comes with great power comes greater responsibility. And at IBM, you take this really seriously. And I loved all the examples you shared. So if a company was like, putting these AI governances in place, where would you tell them? How do they start? Where do they start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit different for every company. And that's the challenge that people have right now, is to figure out how best to ensure leveraging the current business structure that they have in place, right? To start thinking about these considerations in much the same way. I know from our perspective, we think of it as a few years ago, we were looking at concepts like privacy and security by design. So we think about it as ethics by design from that perspective, and just building upon the existing practices we have in place, and ensuring that we're embedding in the day-to-day decision-making from that perspective. I also think you need to start with your foundational values. Mm-hmm. And then using the unique organizational construct in your own business, build upon and embed those values in the most effective way in your business.
Yeah, that's true. So what is the best way to identify bias? Is it possible to even identify bias at the data stage and at the algorithm stage, or is it only after the model has been deployed can you actually figure out that there is a bias in the system?
Oh no, I think it's throughout the life cycle. That's one of the things that's sort of unique about AI is you start with something, and what you end with once you've deployed it is often very different, because the model learns over time and trains on new data, and the data evolves. So we advocate for a life cycle approach to things like bias, starting from the very concept. When you think about what is the purpose of the end purpose of what you're trying to accomplish, and what do you need to train on that, and looking at data sets again from the beginning throughout the life cycle of the product.
Yeah, we have another audience question. At the lowest level, how is this implemented? If someone is at the development stage of a product, how does it go from top down to bottom, or is there any other way around it?
Well, I think so. One of the things that we do here at IBM is this sort of ethics by design concept. So starting, I think it starts from the very beginning, when you're thinking about, as I mentioned, what are you trying to accomplish? What data do you need to accomplish that? Just having people start thinking about being aware of these issues. Here are the questions that you should ask. Here's what you should check for in your data. Here's what data you need to accomplish the end goal. So it is sort of starting with a vision, an end vision, but backing up and looking at, to accomplish that, what are the questions I need to be asking at the beginning?
Yeah, very true. We have a lot of questions. So Alberto asks, what about Clearview AI and Amazon that's still self facial recognition AI?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned in my remarks that there's often this pacing problem where regulation can't keep up, and it's kind of up to companies to set their own guardrails. So I can speak for what we advocate for. We don't sell general purpose facial recognition anymore, because we don't think the technology is ready. We think there needs to be a closer look at the use of facial recognition, particularly in the context of law enforcement, but other uses as well. So that's our point of view. And we've called on regulators to start taking a look at that. Right now, what the companies are doing in that space, and Clearview in particular, there's no law essentially, stopping it. So it's the guardrails that companies need to put in place to build trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce says, you mentioned a call to regulators to focus on the specific uses of AI. Can you speak more to the ask for regulation and what it would mean to us developing AI products?
Yeah, so what we called for in our policy piece, we have, by the way, for those who are interested, the IBM Policy Lab offers, as I mentioned, concrete actionable policy recommendations. We have a number of papers in that lab, so you can read in more detail what we've suggested in things like precision regulation for AI or regulation for facial recognition technologies. But it's for regulators to initially, what we've called for is an initial risk assessment. So if you look at something very simple like facial recognition, or something everybody will understand, right? You use it on your smartphone. It's one-to-one match. The picture on your phone doesn't leave the phone, so no one else has access to it. It simplifies you can choose whether or not to implement it. And if you use it on your phone, it's just easy. It makes it easy for you to unlock it. But facial recognition used by a police force and cameras on the street, very wholly different use of that technology. And so what we're suggesting, it's not the technology, it's not the ability to recognize a face, it's the actual application, how you're going to use that particular technology that regulators should look at. So that's at a very high level, the distinction between the technology itself and the use of that technology.
Sure, thank you, Christina. Michael McNair asks, in the education sector, I know we are a little over time, but these are some great audience questions. Do you have a few more minutes, Christina, to spend with us? Thank you. In the education sector, what types of people should be a part of the data governance committee and AI committee? Should we start with consulting first?
I mean, I'm not working within the education sector myself, so it's kind of hard for me to answer. But I would say, just as a general premise, when you're thinking about, we've been very much active in advocating for multi-stakeholder dialogues, right? So if you're talking about the appropriate use of technology, data, and the like, having a diverse cross-disciplinary, lots of people from different backgrounds, having stakeholders as well, those who will be subject to regulation, to those who will be the subject of an AI application, those who work on it from vastly different backgrounds. Diversity is really, really critical because you get lots of different perspectives that you might not otherwise experience or take into account. So I think from our own ethics board, for example, we have a very cross-disciplinary board. We have people representing pretty much every business function within IBM, lots of different backgrounds. Some are technical, some are not technical. And we feel that that really brings us lots of different questions that you would, one pillar alone isn't going to have the answers to. So that diversity of background is really, really important.
And we'll just take one more question, last question for Christina. Wow, thank you, audience, for the questions. And thank you, Christina, for spending some extra minutes with us here today. Alberto Roldan asks, what's the quantitative measure of trust and transparency?
I don't know if I can answer quantitative. These questions are, yeah, I mean, look, every day we ask questions about what we're doing internally and the like. I don't think there's anything mathematical. A lot of these are really, really hard questions, which is why I feel it's really important to firmly adhere to some North Star. For us, that North Star is the principles, right? So you take a hard line about some things, but often there's, often you're in a gray space, right? Where you have to make a call, and being able to point to those principles has been really something that's been very valuable for us. But quantitative, I don't think there is one. Trust is really what it comes down to in many respects, right? You'll be able to see if technology isn't trusted, if people don't want to use it, if businesses can't use it because their customers won't trust it. That's where the measure is that's one way to measure it.
True. All right, that's all the time we have for Christina today. Thank you so much for being with us. Fabulous talk, and thanks to Kevin and Aaron also for helping us coordinate all this and getting us Christina. Thanks again, Christina. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And that was Christina. We just heard from her. Fabulous talk. Thank you, audience, for all the questions. Alberto, Susanna, Bruce, Michael. Great to have you all. And now we're going to move on to our next guest, which is Eric Corey Fried. And we're just waiting for him to join. And so we'll take a quick 2-minute break and return. Quick restroom break for everyone, coffee break, whatever you need to do. Then come back and join us. All right, looks like we have Eric here. So let me introduce my next guest and speaker. Eric Corey Fried is an award-winning architect, author, and global speaker. As Senior Vice President of Sustainability for Canon Design, he leads the healthcare, education, and commercial teams toward better and higher performing buildings for over 20 million square feet a year. For 2 decades, he was founding principal of Organic Architect, a visionary design leader in biophilic and regenerative design. Eric is the author of 12 books, including Green Building and Remodeling for Dummies. He holds a prestigious LEED Fellow Award from the U.S. Green Building Council. Please welcome Eric Corey Fried.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Eric, how are you?
Hi. Good. How are you? Sorry to scare you with my last-minute entry.
Oh my goodness. I was like, you are not here backstage in the green room. What am I supposed to do? I was like, should I shuffle the agenda here? I like
No.
the next guest, but I'm glad you're here, and stage is all yours, Corey. Take it away.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. So thank you for that lovely introduction. As you heard, my name is Eric. I'm an architect and director of sustainability at Canon Design. And if you want to email me or connect with me, you can do that. Also, if you want a copy of the slides, you can text the word green to that number and I'll send you the slides. By the way, that's not my number, so don't send me weird pictures of your junk or anything. That's just an automated service that we use. So keep that in mind. Normally I live in Portland, Oregon. Today I'm in LA, oddly enough, but normally I live in Portland, Oregon. I think what we've all seen in the last maybe 3 years is that nowhere is safe now. Climate change has come for everyone, and disproportionately, of course. But no matter where you are, there are risks and threats. Over the last 2 years, I know that we've all been in our little hidey hole, right? And stuck at home with the pandemic. And I'm not good with staying home. I like to go out. And so I started developing these weird hobbies. I started collecting pictures of people that were completely unaware of their face on Zoom. And I've got thousands of these now. What else? I applied to be an astronaut. This is true. And I have not heard back. So yeah. And then I wrote my 12th book on the circular economy. And the reason why I wrote it on the circular economy is because I really see that as the framework we need to address the problems that we face. If the traditional economy is what we call linear, right? It's a take, make, waste economy. A circular economy looks to bend those loops and change it from take, make, waste into harvest, make, and remake over and over again. And companies like Adidas and IKEA and Intel and Amazon and Patagonia and Lego have all embraced this. And we got to interview all of them for the book, which was kind of wonderful. So given that context, where do we go from here now, right? We just spent almost 2 years indoors. So I want to ask you, what was the biggest driver of digital transformation at your company this year? Was it that your CEO had some grand vision that he or she wanted to put out? Was it that your CTO deployed some new, amazing, game-changing technology? Or was it more likely this little guy? Because I'm willing to bet it was that little guy. If anything, the good news is that COVID showed us that we could work remotely from anywhere pretty well. And if there's any light at the end of the tunnel, maybe that's it. So today, what I want to talk to you about very quickly, because I think I've been given 6 minutes or something to try to share this, is I want to talk about the urgency of carbon. And this is me as an architect from my perspective. I'm not a tech person. Number two, how we redefine cost, and a little bit of our innovation approach and how we get into it. And I want to start with the urgency, because the urgency of carbon is now dire, for lack of a better word. In August, the IPCC came out with their 6th and final assessment report, essentially unequivocal data from all the world's scientists, about 200 scientists, all in unison, saying this is a flashing code red for humanity. One of the little tidbits in the report was that we've already released enough carbon in the air to blow past our 1.5 degrees centigrade target. And that's the goal that we've all been working towards for the last 30 years. Well, it looks like we might not make it unless we take really, really urgent action today or yesterday, really. As an architect, we tend to think of one building at a time. But one of the things that's really changed for me in the last 5-10 years is that I don't really see it one building at a time. I don't think we're going to solve the world's challenges one building at a time. We really need to realize that a building is actually connected to a larger network of infrastructure and legacy systems and communities and history and neighborhoods. And really, if we want to address these problems at the scale we need to address them, we need to not think of them one building at a time, but rather in this district scale. Because a lot of our buildings are built based on a set of assumptions that are no longer true. And maybe they never were, right? In a warmer, wetter world, how can we design buildings the same way that we've always been designing them? It doesn't really make sense. We're working on projects in Miami Beach, and we told the client, we're not designing your air conditioning system for 2021. We're designing your air conditioning system for 2050 because it's only going to get hotter and stickier in Miami. In addition to all that, the world is now building at an unprecedented rate. We're about to double the world's building stock by 2060. To give you a sense of scale, that's essentially building an area the size of New York City every 5 weeks for the next 40 years. That's what we're doing. So imagine a New York City area being built every 5 weeks. That's what's going on. And if we do it the old-fashioned way, we're going to completely blow past our carbon budget. In addition, we're fighting with the rest of the world on natural resources. China is also using an unprecedented amount. They're doing 50 bridges a year. They've built one large dam every day since 1949. They've consumed more concrete in 2 years than the United States did in all of the 20th century. It's just an unprecedented, almost inconceivable amount of just stuff. And at the same time, in this country, we love buying crap, right? We keep buying crap. And 4 new dollar stores opened today in the United States. Every day in the United States, 4 new dollar stores open. That's a dollar store every 6 hours, if you're paying attention. There are now more dollar stores that are all Walmart, McDonald's, and CVS combined. It's a lot of stuff. And so it also explains why we reached a rather grim milestone last year, where for the first time in human history, all of the man-made mass now outweighs all of the Earth's biomass. In other words, all of our crap now outweighs all life on Earth. And that's never happened before. And that should be a sign that we're doing something horribly wrong. It also explains why the richest guy on Earth is the guy that sells us all this stuff, right? That kind of tracks. That kind of makes sense. And this is why I'm interested in the circular economy. This idea that whether it's take, whether it's make, or whether it's waste, all of those could use improvement, and all of those make Kanye unhappy, if you know what I mean. All right. So this is how I see us right now, basically. We're just kind of like, la-di-da. We're just completely oblivious to the world going on right over there. And as a result, this is where we now are. We are at a proverbial fork in the road. The decisions we make in the next 12 to 18 months are going to determine the rest of our century. So do you want to have a bad century or a really, really crappy century? That's basically what's ahead of us, unfortunately. And so I almost feel like we're all just tiny little dinosaurs, just completely unaware of the impending doom over our heads. Jim Collins has he's got a book called Good to Great, and I imagine a lot of you have read it. It's a wonderful book. But at the end of the book, he does this exercise with CEOs. And he asks them to name their 5 most brutal facts that are facing them. And so I did that for the construction industry. And brutal fact number 1 is that climate change is going to change everything. As soon as we put a price on carbon, how we deliver our buildings is going to have to change, whether we like it or not. Number 2 most brutal fact is that liability is going to make whole areas uninsurable. And by areas, I mean both geographic regions, like the southeast portion of the country, but also whole industries, just uninsurable. Number 3 most brutal fact is that concrete, and we use a lot of it, still does not have a low carbon alternative yet. I mean, there are things that we're doing, I'll show you some of them, but still it's not great. Number 4 most brutal fact is that this demand for materials is going to require that we come up with something else. We can't keep fighting over the last scraps of raw natural materials. We're going to have to build engineered living materials. We're going to have to use waste in a new way to create new materials. We're going to have to grow materials. And in fact, I did a whole TED talk just on that idea, just let's grow materials. And the 5th most brutal fact is that the construction industry is going to have to deploy technology in a way that it's never done before. And it's not really equipped to do. So I'm really here to ask all of your help of how to do that, because really we've been building the same way for 200 years. And we're not really deploying technology in any meaningful way. And it would shock you how badly we're not doing it. This really leads me to 6 kind of clear objectives here. Number 1 is that we have to make every building as efficient as possible, including the existing ones. Number 2, we need to target net zero on every single thing that we do. Number 3, we need to use every tool in our toolbox because that's just where we are. Number 4, we need to measure everything measurable. That includes electrification of buildings, data, occupancy, everything. And we need to do it now. And finally, we need to use nature as a technology. We need to deploy nature at scale. That means bioremediation, phytoremediation, microremediation, thermal mass, passive cooling, passive solar, all the things that nature does for free, we need to deploy. As I mentioned, we're not using technology in construction, really. I know there's a lot of companies that say they are. They call me every day. But we're just dabbling compared to what other industry, compared to what Google and Apple and Oracle are doing. It's laughable. So we're not really mining any data or insights. We're not really seeing the productivity gains or automation gains that we should be seeing, like that other industries see. And we're not really deploying prefabrication yet. And keep in mind that Canon Design owns a prefabrication company. So we're trying, we're getting there, but I feel like we're infants in all this. We need to get to zero by 2050, and we need to do a bulk of those cuts by 2030. And just if you're paying attention, 2030 is not 10 years away, it's 8 years away. It's like 95 months away. So I know it feels like it's 10 years away, but it's much closer than we might realize. So there is no time here. We have 0 years. We've been telling our clients that if they have a 2040 plan or a 2050 plan, that is a today plan. There's no such thing as a 2040 plan. Dust off whatever you got and put it in action. And if you don't have one, well, then quite frankly, we'll help make you one. And we're architects, but we're developing climate action plans for our clients. One of the things I struggle with is, and I struggle with this all the time, is anytime that we're demolishing a building, anytime that we're building a dumb glass box, or anytime that we're not targeting net zero, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody, anytime we're not doing those things, I feel like that is a form of climate denial. We're denying the reality that's facing us. And I struggle with this as an architect, right? We know better, and yet we still do these things. And that's kind of the problem. But the one thing that gives me hope is that we created all this destruction by accident. We weren't trying to destroy the climate. We just did it, oopsie, by accident. And the one thing that gives me hope is, imagine what we could accomplish if we tried. Imagine what we could do if we actually put our heads together and set a vision. And so, believe it or not, that makes me feel better. Number 2 is the looking at cost in a new way. And this is really something, because when you're in the sustainability world, you're constantly being asked for the ROI, for the payback. And I don't see other industries or other disciplines getting scrutinized this way, right? We build $1.6 billion stadiums that are used 8 times a year by people who can't really afford it to go watch a bunch of millionaires play a game. So I don't think it's about the money. Same thing with, when we're working on a building and a client will turn and say, hey, for sustainability, I'm going to scrutinize every single thing that you do, but where are we with the $26 million parking garage that we're building next door? So subsidizing everybody's parking and driving habits, for 26 million, that's fine. That goes unquestioned. But this idea that suddenly for sustainability, we have to show a payback of less than 5 years for everything, that's kind of nuts. I was in a meeting the other day, and one of the engineers, he made a joke, and this happens a lot in sustainability. He said, hey, I ate a salad today. How many lead points does that get us? And, ha, 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 everybody laughed. But, obviously the answer is 2, right? Everybody knows you get 2 lead points just for eating a salad. That's common practice. But the point is, we're not selling the value, right? Nobody ever questions the ROI on the coffee and donuts in the office. They just do it because they want to do it. Nobody ever questions the ROI on the Christmas decorations every year. They do it because it's needed. You want to do it. So I don't think it's about the money. And I think this idea of chasing ROI all the time is a trap, really. The truth is that a green building is a better building. A green building offers benefits that have value. And so what we do is we don't sell clients on green building. We sell them on the outcomes that sustainability brings. Improved test scores in students, better patient recovery times, lower operational costs, of course, right? All of those have outcomes, and those have value. So if you do sustainability right, it doesn't cost you money, it makes you money, because there are orange slices and then there are orange slices, and the two are not always the same. The truth is that if we save the planet and keep warming below 3 degrees, which is not a great target, by the way, but even if we just do that bare minimum, we could save $10 trillion by the end of the century. $10 trillion in calculated savings that we could do. If you think about the normal healthcare experience with its long waits, its low comfort, its high stress environment, the typical educational experience with bad spaces, bad lighting, bad waste. Think about the typical workplace experience with poor air, poor light, poor connectivity to your neighbors. They're not great, right? But if we start to track these outcomes, if we change what we measure, potentially we could change the world. Think about how we normally measure success in a building. It's what, cost per square foot, maybe revenue per square foot, maybe payback and ROI. But how should we measure success in a building? Shouldn't we also measure patient recovery times, stress reduction on the patients and the families, staff retention? All those things have a lot of value. And so let's calculate those too. And how else could we measure success in a building? Couldn't we also measure the amount of energy we produce, the amount of carbon that we sequester, the amount of species we provide a habitat to? Yeah, and those things also have value. If we change what we measure, we can change the world, which leads me finally to number 3, our approach to innovation, how we do it. We bake sustainability in at the outset. We have to. It's the biggest change that I made when I came to Canon Design. I moved it up in the agenda from the last item to the first, really, and it needs to show up on every page of your pitch, every page of your proposal. One of the other things we did was we have these meetings and everybody sits around, a bunch of expensive experts sitting around telling me what they think. Well, I already know what they think. What I really want to hear is I want to hear what they wonder. That's the good stuff. And just that little trick of saying, don't tell me what you think, tell me what you wonder, that flips them into this kind of innovation mindset. And suddenly they're much more open and receptive to other things. You've seen this last 2 years, what happens when people try to understand something complex like science, and it kind of doesn't work. And so this idea that everybody's going to suddenly understand climate change is, it's a joke. It's not going to happen. We need to just make it appealing to everybody, because people are dumb. They're pretty dumb, and they're preoccupied. They're like, whatever the hell's going on with ketchup right now, they're really busy. So that's the thing. The thing about innovation is it never looks the way you want it to look, right? It's messy. The inventor of the light bulb had to do it by candlelight. So again, it's not something that you normally ever see. And by the way, I know what I'm talking about because Canon Design was voted the number 2 most innovative company in North America. Not most innovative architecture firm, by the way, most innovative company. So this is something that's in our DNA. And by the way, I know you're thinking, well, who is number 1? It was Chobani Yogurt. And they make a nice yogurt, but it's kind of weird to lose to a yogurt company. So just deal with that. Okay, so you have to choose innovation. It's not going to happen by accident. It's not going to happen because you put it on an agenda. You all have to opt in and do it. We like to say that innovation is an avalanche. In other words, every snowflake has to participate in the innovation. And also, we tend to focus on clients' pain points, because the things that are driving them nuts are the things that they're suddenly going to be much more receptive to switching out. And just lastly, I want to show you this very quickly. What we normally do is we show them their priorities and we have them set the dials to where they are. We do the same thing with payback and ROI. We do the same thing with waste and what they're spending money to throw away. We do it with risks and liabilities. And so the idea is that we're mapping out their pain points and getting them where they need to be. Okay, I think that's the end of my time. So that being said, in the time that I've been talking, another 1 million tons of CO2 have been released. It never stops. So we really need to up our game. I'm hoping this has opened your eyes to that challenge. And really, if we can start to take this outcome-based approach to technology and sustainability, wouldn't that ultimately be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? So thank you all very much. Thank you, Shipley, for having me. And hopefully I stayed within my time reasonably.
Awesome, Eric. No, I completely agree. It has to be, innovation cannot be an afterthought. It has to be actively thought. And I wouldn't agree with you that, yeah, people are not stupid, but they just have so much on their mind, so much on their plate. And that's exactly what we say. Like, the things that we are talking about climate change now is like, oh, it's too late. We are still under this denial that it's not happening, and we're just rising to the fact that we are in this acceptance state that no, whether we are in denial or not, it's happening. And that's why DataEthics4All wants to be at the forefront of this. Should not happen with the data privacy and data issues. 50 years later, we are waking up to the fact that we are still in denial and data privacy is not a thing, everything is good. So yes, we need to be proactive. Completely agree. A lot of good questions. I'm going to start with the couple. I know Susanna says that yes, I did a lot of crazy things during pandemic, but I didn't think about escaping Earth or trying to be an astronaut. So that was fun.
It seemed like a good option to leave the planet.
Yeah, that's true. Astronauts should have been on the list. Okay. So Torian Dyer says, thank you, Eric. So many people have been saying that about concrete. However, many places can't seem to figure out a good alternative. What are your list of viable alternatives that nearly any country can afford?
Well, some of my favorite alternatives are just, engineer the building to use less mass, right? Normally, we just kind of assume the default thicknesses of everything, and we do it out of habit. But if we actually sharpen our pencils a little bit, what we found is that we can reduce the mass of a building by 20% just by doing the math, oddly enough. The other thing that we'll do is we find alternatives, right? So instead of Portland cement, which is the chief ingredient, we can use something else. And a lot of those alternatives, they used to be free. Now people are wising up and they're starting to charge for them, but they're still cheap. So fly ash, blast furnace slag, there's a whole bunch of these kind of alternative admixtures you can put in that are 1-to-1. So every ton that you use of those, there's a ton of carbon, a ton of Portland cement you don't have to use, which is a ton of CO2 you're not emitting. So you're taking waste products and putting into the concrete, and it works. And there's a lot of documentation out there for it. And then we've been playing with the companies that do these admixtures, like Carbon Cure, where they inject CO2 directly into the water of the concrete mix, and it becomes a carbon sink that way. And it's pretty interesting. So we've been playing with a lot of these things, and again, cost is an issue everywhere, not just in certain places. I mean, our clients are all worried about it too. So we found that efficiency is always the cheapest low-hanging fruit, and so we always start with that point, and then we start to move up to technologies when efficiency isn't enough.
Another LinkedIn user asked us, that we are streaming live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and we are getting questions from everywhere, which is awesome. Yeah, it's everywhere. They're all coming in. So how do we go about creating those sustainable materials and make current buildings construction projects sustainable? I know you touched upon this a little bit, but if you want to elaborate on that.
So there's two kind of parallel worlds going on right now. There's a world of waste, and they're their own thing, and they don't really talk to other people, but it's a pretty interesting world because lots of valuable resources moving down this world of waste. That includes agricultural waste, but also all the municipal waste that we generate all the time, and people finding ways to try to close that loop. Look at TerraCycle is a good example of a company that's really scaling that, of taking waste and making it into new products. The other one is the synthetic biology CRISPR crowd that are manipulating DNA to grow things for what they want. And their goal is ultimately to grow a new kidney or grow a new heart or something like that, right? Where they essentially clone your heart. That's basically that's their ultimate goal. But in the meantime, what we can do is we can grow materials. These materials could have some of the qualities and characteristics that we'd want. So I could grow a panel that could heal, or I could grow a panel that could absorb CO2 or give off oxygen. I could grow a panel that glows in the dark, really. And we already know all of the genetic codes for all those little features, and it's just a matter of programming it in. So one of the things that we've been working on for the last, I don't know, however long, is this idea of how do we do that? And there's a number of companies now that we're kind of working with to help them along to do that. One of my favorites is a company called Biomason. Their ultimate goal is to grow concrete. And so they're taking recycled aggregate, basically stone dust, and mixing it with bacteria, and they're growing concrete tiles. It's not really concrete, it's something else. It's pretty wild. And I'm very excited to see where they go with it next.
Thank you, Eric. I think that's all the time we have, but there are many more questions from our audience. So stick around on the chat, the comment section of the live stream. And if you want to answer a few of them, take those questions. That will be great. It was a pleasure having you, and thank you for your time, Eric.
Oh, thank you all. Good seeing you all. And hopefully next year we can do it in person where we can hug and dance and stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, Eric. That was Eric. Thank you. And next we have Christina Catherine King. And she has been waiting patiently for her time. So there you are, Catherine King. So let me introduce her really quickly, and then we'll bring her up on stage. Catherine King works passionately to provide senior executives with the hottest content and insights in the areas of digital data, analytics, information, business development, and innovation. She hosts and moderates Corinium's largest events, as well as the Business of Data podcast. Please welcome Catherine King.
Sure, Pete.
Hey,
Thank
Catherine.
you so much. Hello, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm going to apologize now to everyone that I sound a bit funny. It's not just the British accent, it is a bit of a cold as well, but thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is so great. And sorry to keep you waiting in the green room. I know we get super excited, some of our speakers, and the audience had such great questions, and so we went a little over time. But yeah, I'll add your deck to the screen, and I'll let you take it away.
Amazing. Thank you. No, I was absolutely in awe of Eric there, talking all things sustainability. Definitely another passion area of mine for sure. But you gave me a fantastic intro, so I'm not going to spend too much time expanding on what I do. But yes, I do look after our video content and some of our audio content as well. So the Business of Data podcast. And as you mentioned there, I do get to moderate lots of wonderful events. And it's great to be with you all today. And I can see the comments below. So if you do have any questions, do pop them in. But I know we're going to have a bit of time at the end if you do have any questions. So today I'm going to talk you through across the last year within the business of data, how we have been elevating voices within data and analytics and making our content more inclusive and therefore competitive. But I think probably best is if I start outlining a bit more about who we are so you have a bit of context. So Corinium is a successful conference and event company holding portfolios in data analytics, information security, and AI. We have offices and people all around the world generating multi-day conferences through to custom intimate roundtables. And then the business of data is our data and analytics platform where we host our content. So this is where the podcast lives. We have reports, articles, blogs, you name it, we've got it. So that's where that all lives. And then over the last year, whilst we've been forming the business of data, we've been on a bit of a mission to ensure that we create amazing content where we elevate all voices within the community and do so inclusively. Now, I'm going to take a moment to pause here and say, are we perfect at this? Absolutely not. Like many things, diversity and inclusion is a journey, not a destination. And there is always more that we can be doing. And I'm sure everyone in the audience will agree that there's always more that can be done. But today, I'd like to talk through what we have achieved so far and how we've done it. And the case studies I'm going to share with you today are based around diversity and inclusion. However, given the audience that are joining us here today, I do believe that the learning points and action points that I'm going to share are applicable across any portfolio. So whether that be data governance, privacy, or ethics, I know we've already spoken about today. So I'm going to be picking on 3 examples out of the many in the interest of time. Otherwise, I could go on and on about this because it's an absolute passion area. And then I'm going to be drawing out 3 foundations for you to do the same thing in your organization. Hopefully, you can take something from this little talk here today and start implementing it in your organization. Now, before we do all of that, I just want to center us and talk a little bit about why we're doing this. Now, in the previous talk, there was mention of ROI and all those things. And I think it's important that we discuss why we want to be doing these. Now, obviously, the first reason is that it's good to do good. But at the end of the day, there's so many good things that businesses can do. So why should you do this? I mean, again, in the previous talk, we're talking about sustainability, another fantastic thing. But in my beliefs, diversity and inclusion are absolutely fundamental to continued business revenue. If our content was generated by people who all looked the same, had the same backgrounds, had the same perspective, we'd only be serving a segment of our community. And to be honest, the content would just be boring. But by having a wide range of perspectives, it allows us to generate competitive content. And in return, that brings revenue because our partners want to be part of great content. So as you can see, by being inclusive, by being diverse, we're creating better stuff. So just as data practitioners yourselves can develop better models with diversity, we can generate better content with diversity. Now, I know, and I'm going to put it in here now, there may be some people in the audience that still think this way, and I know many organizations still suffer with it, that diversity and inclusion can be regarded as the soft, fluffy topic. But more and more organizations are waking up to realize that they really are leaving money on the table when they leave people out of discussions. So now we know why we're doing it. What have we been up to? So let's start with those case studies. So the first is our leading female executive monthly discussions. So these are in the form of LinkedIn Live panel discussions. Each month, a group of C-suite and senior female executives gather to discuss a hot topic. So far, we've covered the cloud, AI, data culture, data for good, and so many more. We've just recently had our anniversary episode, so we've been doing this for over a year now. And you can watch these on LinkedIn Live, or you can pop over to the Business of Data platform and you can watch them on demand as well. Now, you'll notice from that list that I reeled off that there's no mention of being a woman in data. Apart from our special International Women's Day discussion, we don't expect our panelists to segment themselves and talk about their gender in their role and their work. Rather, our aim is to elevate their voices, thus providing a platform and visibility to others of these amazing executives through their thoughts and experience. Now, this is what I would call diversity and inclusion in action rather than words. Now, I'm going to say, of course, there is absolute merit in the discussion for how women experience the world differently in our community. But I am so much of a believer that it shouldn't be the only topic that we are invited to speak on as women. So what have the outcomes of this activity been? Well, for these women, they've told me that their participation, put my teeth back in, their participation has meant that there's been a greater opportunity to discuss hot topics that interest them. Each of the panel discussions that we do, we consult them, we say, hey, what's interesting to you at the moment? And they tell us. Now, one of the main aims, and I'm proud to say, and I'm fairly confident in saying one of the outcomes, has been to provide an example for upcoming talent, that there are amazing real life examples of women in very, very senior roles from some of the world's best known brands absolutely succeeding in their careers. Now, this is a break from the traditional image of what a data analytics leader looks like. And I'm really, really proud that we can be part of that. Now, this work is so important, as we know, and it's important to show the talent market what is out there, because we know that diverse talent is required in order to overcome some of the biggest challenges that our world faces today. So, thinking of AI bias, it was mentioned in the conference already. We are not going to overcome some of these challenges if we do not have a diverse talent pool in the room solving them. So that's the first example. Now, the second example I'm going to give you today is our 30 Leaders Under 30 report. This is pioneered by our head of European marketing, Matt Hunt. Now, earlier this year, we launched this report and the nomination process, and it was the first one we've ever done that was segmented by age. And the idea behind this was to shed a light upon the leaders of the future, the experiences of which will be unique to the audience we primarily cater towards. And again, it's important to do this work for the amazing folk, because the primary audience that we do serve is senior executives. And naturally, that means an older cohort. But providing a project like this, we're able to generate a perspective and understand what's next in the generation of leaders, who's coming up, what are they doing to make the community better, what are they skilling themselves up to be. And what was really interesting is throughout this project and process, it was really clear that a big part of these people's success, the top 30, all had something in common, and that was taking advantage of mentorship. So one of the things we did was create a community shout feature in our weekly Clubhouse room, which we do every Friday, where people can come up to the virtual stage and shout about what they're doing. So lots of people use this to shout about a job opening, or they're looking for a job. Others use it to shout about a post they put on LinkedIn and they want some support. But we really encourage people to say that they're looking for a mentor, or that they are themselves open to mentorship, because we know for the leaders of the future, in order to, again, have that diverse leadership that we really, really, really require, we know that mentorship is a huge part of that. Now, the final example I want to give today is a little bit different from the other two. This is more the inclusion side than the diversity side. And this was born out of a chat between myself and our head of marketing and our global marketing officer. We were discussing over a coffee at one of the studios when we were recording our Business of Data Festival content, how so many people consume content in a different way since the pandemic. And I happened to mention recently that I took up listening to audiobooks. Personally, I struggle to retain information the first time round in a long written format. I prefer a podcast, video interview, or audiobook. So in that moment, we came up with the idea of having someone voice over an upcoming report to provide a different way of consuming our written content and for it to be more accessible. Given the industry rise in podcasts, and to be honest, our own podcast success, we felt that this was, a pretty good idea to at least try. And the results have been really interesting for this first attempt, and something we definitely want to repeat in the future. And it's given us a new chance for our audience to engage with us in a new way that they haven't been able to before. And something I mentioned at the start, it's also given us that chance to be competitive. Although podcasts are incredibly popular, not too many people are producing audio reports in the data and analytics space. So by being inclusive, we're being competitive. In turn, that equals revenue. So just from those three examples, like I said, I chose three out of the many because I thought they were really, really good examples of what we're up to. So what can you take from these case studies and apply to yourself? So there's a few key things that I think are really fundamental for elevating voices. And again, I'd love our audience members here today to be thinking about their own organizations, their own departments, their own communities, how you can make sure you are being as inclusive as possible, encouraging a diverse audience, participation, speakership, whatever it is you're doing, how you can do it. So the first big challenge is infrastructure. One of the biggest pain points of our community is not having the knowledge of where to participate within their passion. Infrastructure is so key. So because we have a monthly discussion, many women have contacted me asking if they can participate in our leading executive panel, or they want to be regular audience members, or can you send me a calendar invite? Because they believe in what we're trying to achieve by elevating female voices organically. Now, this is what I alluded to earlier, but I really want to pull out here that you really start to attract people based upon your action values. Your action is so crucial. So whether that is a forum, a discussion, a committee, an advisory board, whatever it is, there needs to be a level of infrastructure where people can come and live out their values with you. So I keep saying it, but this doesn't have to be diversity and inclusion. This could be, for example, now I'll take ethical AI, because we were talking about that earlier. Why not create a monthly forum where you can get together and chat about the concerns, the opportunities, the excitement, the challenges, confirm a range of guests, get involved, encourage discussion, but most importantly, have a place where that discussion can occur. There is a massive difference between a company that is concerned about ethical AI, diversity and inclusion, and a company that actively provides a place to hear those concerns and act upon them. So that's the first one. The second is, naturally, this type of work also prompts people to talk about your organization. Now, this is great for recruitment, but it's also great for networking and introductions. So I've had many leaders request to be a guest on the Business of Data podcast on the back of listening to episodes with Black in Data or My Skin, My Story. Now, these haven't always led to another diversity and inclusion discussion. It's just that their personal values align to our business actions. It's that they can say, yes, I want to be part of that story. And whenever it comes to brand awareness, I always think of an old friend of mine who said, if the media doesn't know about it, you haven't done it. And I absolutely believe that to my core. It's all well and good doing these activities in silos and internally, but unless you spread the awareness, the good stops there. It can't go any further. So as I mentioned earlier, we've had introductions to other leaders, people nominating themselves to get involved, and just general gains in brand loyalty and positive sentiment, which all enables us to continue doing the work we're doing, because it's like a chain reaction and everyone wants to get involved. And then the last thing, which I think is just on every single slide deck ever of any talk of trying to get something actioned, which is having champions. It's absolutely crucial. Now, I'm a firm believer that the work of championship shouldn't fall to one person all the time, but it is so important that you identify who is really passionate about this type of work and then support them. You can't just identify them and say who's passionate, you have to then support them. This goes for internally and externally as well. And again, you can use any topic here. So whatever it is that you're trying to push forward, find those champions, cloud security, ethics, governance, whatever it is you're trying to achieve, find those champions. Now, I have to stop here and do a shout out to our senior leadership team who have always supported our initiatives towards elevating all voices in data analytics. Whatever ideas we come to them with, they say, run with it, do it, experiment with it, which is such a fantastic place to be, because without this executive buy-in, you have a lot of passion and nowhere to put it. And again, that loops back to the challenge around not having infrastructure and not being able to do it. So I'm going to wrap up very shortly now, but my final words would be, don't be afraid to be passionate. It attracts other people to you. Provide a place for that passion to occur. Don't go keeping it to yourself. Spread the message and reinforce your champions with resources and support. Now, the last thing I will say before, if we've got any questions that have come in, the last thing I'll say is we're just about to end nominations for our top 100 global leaders list, but you can still nominate yourself, and that will be a huge celebration of everyone in our community. So if you'd like to know a bit more about that, pop me a message. But yeah, she'll be.
Thank you, Catherine. This was awesome. I loved all your examples. Thank you for sharing. Great idea to see this report. I think that's someone from the Corneum team, but it's a great idea to see this report, Catherine, and how the 30 under 30 leaders are seeing the importance and benefits of mentorship and becoming mentors themselves.
Absolutely love that. Yeah, one of the questions I get quite often on this topic is because we were so lucky to have executives buy-in, and not everyone has that in their organization. What do you do if you don't have executive support? And I think it's about demonstrating the value it provides in a sense of being competitive. So as I mentioned with the report, with the audio report as well, it's about saying, well, if we go the extra mile, if we do these things, we're going to be competitive, and it's going to be advantageous to the ROI, which is at the end of the day what all businesses really, really care about. So it elevates voices, it does that human good, but it also helps from a money perspective as well, which is always good.
Yeah, I loved your spin on the report, putting it in an audio format, right? I mean, we are all trying new things, and I know that when we are either active or doing things, then we have still the auditory things going. So whether we listen to a book or a report, I think that's a great spin. And I also agree, being a marketer, lifelong marketer myself, I agree with you. If the media doesn't know it, then you've not done enough, right? I mean, so it's great to be a champion within the company, but sometimes you have to champion it outside of the company also.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think that helps to bring stakeholders on board sometimes, because sometimes they are not convinced of the idea themselves, but when they see the need and the enthusiasm outside, then they are convinced that this is a good idea. So show them instead of, data always speaks volumes. So show them.
Exactly. 100%. And I mean, it's statistics like the fact that it's something crazy, like 95% of mobile users don't listen to video with sound on. They watch it via captions because they're in the office looking at their phone, or should be, or they're commuting or whatever. And there's an inclusive comment there with having captions on videos that for the deaf community and the hard of hearing. But actually, is the statistic that the majority of our community are watching videos without captions goes to prove it. So yeah, I'm absolutely behind that. It does need to be data driven. And if it takes that statistic to be the one that pushes the budget over the edge so that you can get captions on your video, then that's what you need to do. Sometimes you need to think outside the box. And it goes back to my earlier comment about diversity and inclusion being seen as the fluffy topic still. It doesn't need to be. You can find a different angle and still get the same result. You don't have to always put it under the inclusion banner. It can be under the marketing banner. It can be under the engagement banner, whatever it needs to be. The results are still the same.
One last question for you, Catherine. I know we have great participatory questions. Quick question for you. You had executive buy-in, but what do you advise? Yeah. Okay. So I think you already answered that question.
I saw that one come in. It's such a common one, and I think that it relates to my comment earlier that so many organizations are waking up to this, but I do feel very sorry for those who are still in those organizations who perhaps haven't quite woken up. But I do think the pandemic will have worked wonders for thinking outside the box for those organizations who perhaps couldn't get on board with non-traditional thinking, if you want to call it that. I think that will have helped. So yeah, captions help others understand accents too. There from Adam, I've just seen. Absolutely, exactly. Very much so. And then you can definitely go down the path of translation as well with captions, allowing people who aren't speaking the same language. And we do this within Crinium in some of our Brazil and Mexico based events, where you can join and you can have an English speaker speaking to a Spanish speaking audience and do all those fun things. So again, really proud to work where I do, who really champion this going forward.
Thank you, Catherine. It has been a pleasure. Take care.
Thanks, Shilpi. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. And that was Catherine. And next we have, I guess it's my turn now. So I'm going to take a few minutes to set up my PowerPoint, and then we'll be right back. In the meantime, Bruce, do you have any questions or comments for the audience? Bruce, Kevin, Sam? Hi, Bruce.
Hey.
Hi.
How are
Your voice seems to be a little echoey.
As hints?
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. We had some problem there. Bruce, you might want to check. I don't know if it was on my side, but I could hear some static. So let's take a look at that. And hello and welcome, everyone. And I wanted to give you a quick, brief description and story about Data Ethics for All itself. So as you know, my name is Shilpi Agarwal. I'm the founder of DataEthics4All. And I want to tell you a story about the impact of Data Ethics for All in numbers. So just bear with me here. I'm going to tell you the story and the impact. So I started Data Ethics for All in January of 2020 with a mission to raise awareness on the ethical use of data and AI, build the next generation of ethics first leaders, and tackle diversity in tech through a grassroots approach. In less than 2 years, what started as a humble initiative has turned into a movement, all with your help and support. And I really thank you all for that. We started the Data Ethics for All initiative as a community. The first program that we started was a community, a place for like-minded people to come together and discuss the black, white, gray, and still very nascent and unknown ethics issues of ethics when it comes to data science and artificial intelligence. Because we haven't put the ground rules yet, it is still very new as to what the community believes as the right thing to do when it comes to ethics in data science and artificial intelligence. And so the community was a way for us to have an open discussion about some of these very difficult topics, publicly and privately, some of the things that we are not able to bring up within the company, or we want to learn more because we are grounded in our ethics and we want to learn more. We want to do the right thing, but we don't know yet what the right thing is or what the society believes as the right thing is. And so this whole forum was started to have an open dialogue for such topics. And in less than 2 years, we have grown to 1,000+ members in our community, which may seem like not like 1 million people. It may seem like a small number. But if you look at it, if you look at the stats of who these people are in the community, what does the community look like? It really is a very, very, very impressive number. Our community people, members, belong from ages 11 to 80 years old. So we, unlike any other forums, organizations, or associations, industry associations, we welcome a dialogue between age groups because we feel like our youth, the next generation of leaders, have so much wisdom to share when it comes to data privacy. They are on social media. They know they may not know about privacy, but they definitely know about what affects them and how disinformation or polarization or this constant validation that kids today are looking for on social media from their friends and their immediate fans, and all of that is important for us, the younger and the older audiences, to talk about and see how we can make changes and improve the situation for tomorrow. And so what's really impressive is our audience that ranges from 11 years old to 80 years old. We have member representation from 54 countries. Now, I don't know if this number looks that impressive to you, but I had to look it up, and Google told me that there are a total of 197 countries in the world. And so out of the 195 or 197 countries, I know some of the other ones are going to Google right now, fact checking to see if, Shilpi is saying the right thing. So it's about 195 to 197. And out of that, if we have representation from almost 25% of the countries of the world, I think that's very impressive. And I love that we have representation from so many different parts of the globe. And so today, DataEthics4All is not only known for its community, but also for many, many programs. And along the way, we have achieved many firsts. And I want to tell you a little bit about what those firsts are. DataEthics4All has the first independent, which means they don't have any fiduciary responsibility, advisory council on data ethics to create awareness on the ethical use of the entire data pipeline. So as you know, if you Google, you'll see that there isn't any other council like this to take the mission forward for data ethics and artificial intelligence that doesn't have a fiduciary responsibility. Most of the ethics councils or boards sit within the companies, within the organizations, and they are part of their own organization. But our ethics independent advisory council is an independent board with 13 CXOs from various different disciplines, from for-profit companies to non-profit companies to Fortune 500 even. Next, we have the Data Ethics for Leadership Council, which again, we have members across the globe. We have someone from London, we have Susanna, Bruce, and myself from California Bay Area, and then we have Kevin from Canada, and we have Sam from London, Oxford, England. So we have a small but really mighty team. And our leadership council is the backbone of our organization, and it's the brain of all the programs. And I invite you all to join us, because as you will see some of the stories and our videos that we have posted, the rushes and things that we have, the fun that we have together while getting some work done. So our motto has always been work hard and play hard. And I invite you all to, because we are a fun group of people to be with. We have the DataEthics4All AI Youth Council, which is the first ever youth council to inspire our next generation on the ethical use of artificial intelligence. They started a free STEM youth tutoring club that is so unique in so many different ways. And I'm going to tell you more about that tomorrow. It's a 10-pillar program. And this is a running joke in our leadership council. DataEthics4All always has pillars. We have pillars of our framework. We have 12 pillars in our framework. We have 10 pillars in our free STEM program. So what is it that we are bringing pillars? But it's like we are bringing pillars that are the strongest part of the foundation. So we are bringing the foundation, we are bringing the pillars, and we are inviting all of you to join us to help us build the building. So that's where we are, and our think tank members of the AI Youth Council are really active in town hall discussions. They are active think tank members. They participate in summit. They have participated in hackathons. They have taught workshops. They have designed courses for youth, by youth, on the introduction of data, artificial intelligence, and ethics. And it is available in the Data Ethics Institute for certificate for free that kids can put on their college applications. So really proud of our AI Youth Council. I mentioned our Data Ethics Institute not only hosts the 3 courses that our Youth Council has designed, but it also hosts 16 in total courses, and more are on the way. With 484 students registered, we have some very unique courses such as AI ethics and predictive policing, using data visualization to counter bias. Some of these very unique programs and courses that are not available on any other of the learning platforms today. We introduced the AI Diet magazine. As you know what DIET stands for, we are all about the DIET acronym. Our AI Diet World, our AI Diet magazine, our 100 Diet Champions all stem from that one acronym called DIET, which is Data, Diversity, Inclusion, Impact, Ethics, Equity, Teams, and Technology. And so this is the first magazine designed not just to inform readers on the AI and ML of data science landscape, but to provide a holistic view from the topic of cognitive lens of AI data. Like I mentioned, we published the first 100 list of diet champions, which unlike any other list out there, it's to honor trailblazers in the fields of data diversity, inclusion, impact, ethics, equity, teams, and technology. And these are trailblazers and champions leading the forefront within the company and outside the company. And so this is not a list of uh, based on gender or based on age or based on industry. This runs across industry, across geographical regions, across industries. It is a one-of-a-kind list that we are very proud to put together, and hopefully will continue doing that year after year. We may revisit the 100 diet champions to call it the 100 AI diet champions, but it is something that we are really proud of, and our today, the first day of our AI Diet World is also to celebrate the AI Diet champions. The DataEthics4All also launched an AI Society, which is the first directory that would give customers a choice of rating AI solutions, not just by price, ease of use, features, and customer service, which are very much needed, but there are a lot of other platforms out there that do a great job with that. So our our hope is to be able to go a step further and provide AI solutions, customers to rate AI solutions for ethics, trust, transparency, and privacy as well. And today our AI Society has 100 listed products, and it's now open for customer reviews. So I really encourage you all, and I invite you to please take a look at our AI Society, because that is what our hope is, to provide a holistic view on the AI solutions that are out there today. And so whether you're thinking of implementing an AI solution in your company, our hope is that you'll be able to look at the reviews from a trust, privacy, and a data-centric point of view, and make the right choice. And to all the customers who have used these products, we would love to invite you to rate and review them based on how you think they're handling your data and whether they have your trust. Because as Christina Montgomery said in the first keynote talk today, trust is everything. Trust, we may not have quantitative data on what to do, but trust will tell you everything. If your customers are using your product, then they trust you. And if they trust you, then that is the only metric you need. It's a great metric. So let's use that metric and see if our customers trust us and use us and like us. So we also, DataEthics4All, made a pledge last Thanksgiving, after our AI Youth Council started the Free STEM Club. We realized that it was something that we hadn't realized to this extent. We realized that there is a large population of students that is being left behind, because they don't have the resources of, yes, there is homework help at school and there is homework centers after school, but there is still a lot that needs to be done. And so we made a pledge, 5 million 5-year pledge to help 5 million economically disadvantaged students, not just to help them with free STEM tutoring, which is where we started, but we expanded the program by providing leadership opportunities to these students, as well as career guidance and mentoring, career technical education, essay reviews, as well as college help with their college applications. And To date, we are working with over 30 tutors and volunteers for over 30 schools, and we are constantly reaching out to new superintendents and high school administrators, middle and high school administrators, because this program is for students of 6th grade to 12th grade. And so if you know of, school administrators, or if you can connect us to, or parents who can connect us to, or students in your life who would love to get mentored and career advice, please reach out to us, and we would love to help. To take the mission of the 5 million 5-year forward, we partnered with the Oxford University's internship office, where we have worked with them and provided over 18 Oxford scholars with real life summer internship opportunities this summer, 2021 summer. And there are some really great reviews and stories and in our AI Diet magazine, which is now a blog on our website. So please take a look at what our interns have spoken about us, what was their experience in working with us, the skills that they learned. And we are expanding this internship opportunities to all colleges worldwide and all high schoolers worldwide. And so sometimes it's very difficult for under 16 to really get summer internship opportunities, that too in technology and business. And so if you're interested, please come reach out to us. And we are also doing a mentors drive for our high schoolers with the colleges, because we want a tutors and a mentors drive to have project-led mentors for our high schoolers. So if you are interested in joining us in this effort, again, please reach out to one of us in our leadership team to talk more in details. And then we also partnered with the University of North Texas to bring these series of talks. The first talk we did was My Life as a Linguist. The curator of Smithsonian, Mary Eslen, did a wonderful job. And these are the kind of things we are doing to introduce our youth of next generation, to encourage them and make them aware of the linear as well as the non-linear STEM careers that are available today. We've hosted over 51 events, all the way from town halls to Netflix parties to a summit and a hackathon, a boot camp. What else have we done? We have done great talks. We have hosted our first Volunteer Appreciation Award and Gala. We've done master boot camps, how to build and administer a chat box by our very own Sam. We have done exclusive mixers for youth as well as adults. So we've come a long way. 9 of our volunteers were recommended for the Presidential Volunteer Service Award, and they've earned it, which is one of the highest awards in the country that you can earn for community service. And let me tell you, the number of hours required to earn the Presidential Volunteer Service Award is not very less. Like it's a big number. And these 9 volunteers, we have over 89 volunteers, and so I'm really proud of our volunteer task force, and exceptionally proud of the few that went an extra mile to earn the Presidential Volunteer Service Award. And with that, we feel like in less than 2 years, we have rolled out so many new programs. Like we said, think that, the media is talking about us. We would like the media to talk about us more, but at least I think we have some traction. But we feel that our work has just begun. And that's why the leadership team at DataEthics4All felt that, we need a new name, a new company by the name of DataEthics4All that can take the mission and the vision of this initiative forward and to the next level. And with that, we have started. I'm like super thrilled to announce that just last week we filed for a Delaware Public Corporation, and we are now called the DataEthics4All Foundation. And we really hope and invite you to help make this vision a reality and help us tackle diversity in tech through a grassroots approach. And that's my time. I will take questions if you have any. And I really want to thank again. I'm going to bring all my team members are here because the next panel is their panel. So I'm going to bring all of them here. The leadership team, DataEthics4All is here.
Hey,
Hi,
Sophie.
Kevin, Bruce,
Hey. Hey, everyone.
Sam,
Hi, Shilpi.
Susanna.
Hi,
Thank
everyone.
you all. Thank you all for making this happen. Really proud of our team, small but mighty team. I think we've come far, but miles to go before we sleep. On that note, I'm going to, you guys have a panel discussion and I'll let the moderator, Kevin, talk about it. No, Sam is the moderator. I'm sorry. So go ahead, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first panel of the day, my first panel and the team's first panel on corporate ethics. We're going to be looking at the role of whistleblowers, and I'm going to be a moderator. I'm Sam, and we have our panel, our team, our amazing leadership team. Shilpi's just with us in the background. I think Kevin's here, Kevin Diaz, and Bruce Hoffman, and Susanna Raj. Yeah, really looking forward to it. So yeah, the main discussion point really for today is to look at the recent news about Frances Howard's report and testimony to Congress about her experience at Facebook and the interviews that she's had, with media outlets, and really what our thoughts are on what she raised, the points that she raised. So, as a starter question to the panel, and what are your views on, when just a few days ago we couldn't access our WhatsApp chat, and we couldn't get on Instagram, we couldn't update our Facebook profiles. We had a few hours out of social media. How did you feel when that happened? Does anybody want to start off? We usually have ease of access, don't we? But we had.
I let Bruce go first.
You'd like me to go first? Well, it's kind of funny because in my case, I would say, well, it's probably good for everyone to have a rest from social media from any possible time that can actually happen. But at the same time, in thinking about that, and of course in listening to what's been said, you realize it's not just a rest from social media, but it's a break from people being able to do business, and a break from people being able to communicate because of all the dependencies on the platforms that Facebook owns, and the 2.8 billion people that are actually communicating across the multitude of platforms that are there. So that being down just made it felt like, hey, there's too much all in one place, and it's almost like it's like a risk to world communications to have that be at a company level rather than some ownership beyond it. So it's an interesting challenge that we put ourselves in, and then of course hearing about it, it's it almost feels kind of crazy that it's that big and that much impact could really occur. Of course, personally, I didn't even realize it was going on until somebody on the panel shared it with me, because I wasn't on at that point. So
Yeah, that's a great point. We rely on it so much, and it's a significant number of people, definitely, and it's global and it affects us all. What are your thoughts then, Kevin or Susanna? Do you want to just share your views? I mean, are you happy with the fact that you didn't necessarily have to access social for a few hours, or do you rely on it for business, for example?
No, I don't rely on it for business, but I just realized that how many of the people that are from my from my native land, India, that they're using WhatsApp to connect with me, and not using my traditional phone number because that's an international cost to them. So they were all using WhatsApp, and then to see them that not able to reach me, and I was also not able to reach them. And I just realized how much I was relying on this free service without thinking that that could be yanked away from me. And maybe I am the product now of whenever something is free, they say you are the product that they are selling. So I just realized, okay, now I need to have a backup plan, something that is paid so that I know access it. And also to realize how insecure the whole, process of behind the scenes was when when I was reading the stories, even though I could not understand the technical terminology used, I still could see that it was so incompetent. Oh, that's your dog. Your dog also wants to join. Yeah, that really made me shocked. That's when they talk about encryptions and all
Yeah.
the end-to-end encryptions, you feel so secure about it.
Yeah.
But the security level is as pathetic as me that, using multiple same passwords on different, accounts, they were also doing the same thing at a different level. So that also made me feel less trustworthy of those, mediums that I'm now using,
Yeah.
especially WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook. I did not even know Instagram was down or Facebook was down because I'm not even on those platforms. But I realized WhatsApp was down, and that's what made me go and look at the news to see what's going on. That's
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
I think if I can add pretty much to what was already said, we've put ourselves in this place, like we're so reliant on WhatsApp. And I think it's funny. Bruce's dog there echoes all the sentiment of my extended family. Also back in India, on that day, or at least those 5 hours, I think everyone there uses WhatsApp and some of them use Facebook. Not too many use Instagram, but that's literally all three of those, right? And when this happened, they had no way of reaching out to me, and we reach out to each other every day, almost. And there was this huge panic. They were like, "What's going on? Is the internet down?" Right? That was a funny comment that my mom made as well. Like, "Is the internet down?" Because that's all they do on the internet, right? It's just WhatsApp and Facebook.
Yeah.
And I remember a few months ago, I had actually tried to get them on other kind of instant messaging apps like Telegram that we kind of know. And another comment now comes to mind that my mom and dad had made then was, "Do we really need another app? Isn't WhatsApp like enough? It's amazing. It's so easy to use, all those kind of things."
Yeah.
And now that I think about that, I'm realizing that Facebook has made it so attractive from a user experience perspective. Not a lot of people are willing to make that leap and change to a different app of any sort. And we all know that there are different instant messaging apps that are out there, but everyone just prefers, or most people prefer, Facebook and WhatsApp for their messaging.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you're saying, or as a panel, is I agree. We do rely on it as an application, as a chat tool, and also for sharing, images and audio, and particularly in a country like India where there's a dependence on it almost. Yeah, and I think there are alternatives, out there too. Yeah, sometimes we do put our, we rely on one application, one platform, maybe that could potentially put us at risk of not being able to communicate, with our family and friends. Yeah, if you're able to just turn the power off and then globally not talk to, to close members of the family. Yeah, so definitely worth thinking about, isn't it, for the future? I think the other thing we were discussing as well was that also Francis Haugen brought up was safeguarding and the importance of making sure that particularly with Instagram, that we look after our privacy rights and really consider the harm of platforms like Instagram on young people. Do you think that there's an issue at the moment with platforms like Facebook and Instagram, and is it having an impact, do you think, on young people, particularly young girls, and their health, or do you think that it's okay, for them to use it as frequently sometimes as they do? What's your view?
Well, I guess I can start again, but I think it's pretty clear that, everything that we hear, read, see, study shows that, there's an impact. Things have started. I mean, it was a lot more Facebook originally, where like with shaming and people committing suicide as a result. I mean, there's been quite studies. I mean, the dependency. It's kind of interesting going back to the previous piece of the conversation. If we go back in time, we didn't have this dependency on like, hey, if you couldn't communicate for 5 hours, that wouldn't have been like a surprise, right? You might have said, hey, I could communicate like within a day. It's that dependency on things being instant has changed the entirety of the generation. And you're right, it's everybody's expecting instant feedback. And of course, if you don't get positive feedback, because you've created this dependency has really occurred on social media across the board, that people begin to feel they feel real pain. It's psychological. It's there's mental health issues that have cropped up much significantly worse, and it's just odd that society has created such a dependence on this. And you even think I mean, we talk tomorrow a little about COVID with it, but it's only increased our dependency on this connection. I like what Kevin said a moment ago. Is the internet down, right? It's like the internet is now water to us, right? It's it's the same as air, electricity, food. Internet is the next piece of that we all can't do without. And right, it can cause a lot of pain from people just thumbs downing or creating that negativity around what we post. So I'll let others speak about it, but I know it's a pretty common theme that we hear.
Yeah. I think what struck me was from out of that interview, and also from reading her brief on the documents that she released to the public, is that Facebook was using was putting profits over the public good. Like what was good for the company was not good for the public. So it was not even aligned that way. So they had this conflict to build upon. That was their entire business model. And so there was no way for them to get around it, even though they had a civic integrity, panel put in before the elections, and then they removed the panel once the elections were over. They were like, okay, the election went fine. Let's dismantle this panel now. We are okay. And then January 6th happened, and they were like, oh no, it was not okay. But they just didn't realize that, that what they were doing was optimizing for engagement. By naturally optimizing for engagement, they were optimizing for hatred and optimizing for negativity, and also optimizing for anti-democratic forces to take part in this whole diatribe. So what are your thoughts, Kevin and Bruce? What are your thoughts on having a business model that is diametrically opposed to the public good?
You want to start, Kevin?
No, I'll let you start, because I don't want to risk giving the wrong answer, because I feel like Susanna has a specific answer she expects from us.
No, I don't expect any.
I can take the bait. I know it's a trick question.
You want
to? Yeah.
I was
Okay,
not even
Shilpi,
on
let's
the
hear what you
panel,
have to
but
say.
this is such an
Go
interesting
ahead.
question. Yeah, I think that our the corporate board. I think how it is designed is the incentivize. They have incentivized profits so much to the point that even if you want to put ethics at the forefront, sometimes it is hard. Like, I don't justify whatever is happening with Facebook, and now they are a very big company and they can do whatever they want. But imagine something similar happening to a smaller startup, and that starts with the design and the senior leadership, right? So now if the senior, I always say that ethics has to start from the top down, and it can only happen, it can't go from the bottom up, it has to start from top down. But if the company doesn't make profit, it's like the cycle. Like, you get the first round of funding, you don't get to the second round of funding or the third round of funding unless you show that you're doing well and you show profits. And not necessarily that you have to incentivize profits over a user, but our society, like this whole funding mechanism works that way, where it's hard. All I'm saying that yes, you have to put in a conscious effort to make that decision, draw that line, and be ready to walk away from even the next round of funding to stick to your ethical principles. It's not going to be easy, but somebody has to do it. That's my take. I'm going to go back and listen to all
No,
of
no,
you.
you can stay here, stay here. Yes. Yeah, anyone has anything to respond to Shilpi's
Well,
comment?
the only thing I was going to say in there was sensationalism seems like that, if we go back to the comments I was making to the team is, if you were to watch the news, right, 95% of it is sensationalism and showing all the negativity, right? And so, what started before this is only continuing, and Suzanne, you made a really good point to me that it's only become worse because now people are interacting with it directly where they really couldn't do that with the news. And so it's almost like Facebook and any others just took what the world was really asking for. It's funny because it's and just making it worse, right? Just saying, hey, you really now can access instantly all this information and now react to it and just continue to put your own spin to it, right? So all the, you can have viral stuff that's fun, but boy, you can have viral stuff that just has incredible negativity.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it seems like it should be their responsibility to do something about it. And I think that gets back to something I think Christina said at the beginning about is regulation coming? Will it help? Or is it always just going to be too late and not enough?
Yeah. And I always think regulation is a very low bar, right? So, and to your point, has someone seen the Apple News series on the morning show?
Yes.
Not yet, no.
It's exactly what, Bruce, you touched upon, right? I mean, movie makers say, news makers say, they say that, and even print media, all the media people always say, we only tell what the audience wants to hear. We only make films that the audience wants to see. We only bring out the role models in society that the society believes in or wants to see at that time. It's true and not so true, because if the media people don't do their job with bringing things that people are not ready for, how will people be ever ready for the right thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was really telling that in response to all this backlash, the policy director of communications at Facebook, this was her official response. She actually said, solutions have not yet been found by anyone. So if you know of any company that has found a solution to us, let us know. I mean, seriously. So
Yeah,
I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? Solutions have not been found yet to this problem?
It sure seems like there are.
Yeah,
I feel like companies just need to think about it a little bit more, rather than, like, to your point, Susanna, just saying that there won't be a solution or saying that it's impossible, that kind of thing. I feel like, to Shilpi's point as well, like, ethics starts from the top down. I feel like in the future, once C-suite level executives start appreciating people more than their profit margins, it's very difficult. It's easier said than done, because they're both like opposite to their objectives or business goals, perhaps. That's kind of the direction we need to head towards, looking at people as people than just numbers. It's again it's easier said than done, but if we have that mindset, I think we can come up with solutions towards this. Just need to put on that mindset for sure.
I think you're right. It's a really good point. I think it's making the C-level, C-suite a little bit more accountable and building a bit more transparency within organizations, and knowing what's happening if you're building a piece of technology that could potentially, change the world and benefit people. It's about putting the individual, the user first. Definitely, I agree. Really good points. Yeah. we need to know what's happening and how our data is being used and how the algorithm works within a particular application that's been developed and understand, to build that transparency and trust. Yeah. And we need that guidance as well, right? Companies need guidance and those frameworks as well to support them. Yeah, that advice. So, yeah, really nice discussion so far. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, we keep hearing about all these, the new services that are also free that actually protect your privacy.
Yeah.
But there's so few people that the other things have become so big. How do you even really make a change? Right?
Yeah.
It almost feels like we're just it's such a small place. I mean, you're right. I think we can all agree that change is needed. That's really an easy thing to say. Making it happen, I think, is what we're really what we're here for, is to try to help.
Yeah.
And it's, all of our voices, I think, have some good agreement there. But all we can do is continue to push.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Frances Haugen also said that, social media can be used for positive, and we need to focus on that. I think positive AI and social media for the future and how we can create that trust, is also important, and carrying on with that message as well. It can be used for good, and we don't want to turn away from it, at the same time. So yeah, it connects globally. It connects billions of people across the world, and we rely on it. So yeah, we talk
allowing us to talk to each other, right?
Right. Yeah.
Allows us to talk to each other. So that brings us to the question of moderation and how to moderate content, how to moderate opinions that you don't necessarily disagree with, or while somebody is behind the scenes moderating the content of Facebook, they have to look at the freedom of speech of both parties and see which one should they moderate and which one becomes hate speech. Where do you draw the line?
Right.
So those are the kind of questions that we need to ask ourselves also when we post content and when we post comments. Make sure that it's our freedom of speech, but then how far should it go? Where are the boundaries? So what does everyone think on that?
I mean, I remember studying this, and I know that the conclusion of that, like some of the research that I've read, is that the human brain is just naturally attracted to divisiveness. I think Facebook realized this early on, and obviously it's not the best thing to leverage or take advantage of, but they did, and that's why you see the comment sections. It's usually more than just comments; they're arguments most of the time. And I think another realization that Facebook made early on is that a lot of engagement or consumption of the content itself happens in the comment section. A lot of people prefer finding their information from the comment section versus from the actual content that was posted, just to maybe validate what was posted or find out more information, get reviews and opinions on it. So all of that combined, I think Facebook is just leveraging people's emotions that way, and just the brain's natural inclination towards divisiveness.
Socially motivated, right? Like if you share some things, like if you share a news article or something with me, not just on Facebook or anywhere, and then you post like a 1 or 2 liner, I'm more interested in what you said than what instead of reading the content itself. So because when we are socially connected with each other, we trust the person more who has forwarded that content to us than that actually reading that content and seeing whether it agrees with our opinions. So that's how I won't say that Facebook did not know the comment section would be their most engagement driven, profit driven section. They do know that, and that's why they actually leverage that. Most of their algorithm works behind the scenes on the comment section and also on the likes and everything, not just on the in your post. So they do know. So they did have psychologists there and manipulated us, but I wish they would have psychologists too on board to manipulate us in the other direction as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's a good point. We don't want to be dividing and kind of going against free speech and what we mean by what we see as democracy either. But I think the amplification of negativity is something that needs to be, we need to look at that, and we need to continue having that debate and how we move forward with that. To get the balance right. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
At least amplify positivity also.
Positivity. Yeah. I think we need that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Great. Super. Yeah, so more transparency, definitely, and a more positive future, and ethics starting from top down, as Shilpi said. I think it's really key. Yeah. Do you have any other comments to make about what was raised? Francis, I went covered quite a lot, but do you feel that for example, that we can move forward and still use these tools for the positive, and do you think we're going to be moving forward towards a greater data privacy and protection? What are your views on the next the future in terms of social media and some of the risks? It's the final note.
I mean, if I can go first. One thing that I wanted to also address, because I know we talked about mental health, or rather we mentioned it, but we didn't unpack it enough. But I know that we spoke about it, and we spoke about that particularly in the context of the younger generation.
Yeah.
Besides the whole community aspect of Facebook, there's also these features and tools within it that we should also acknowledge, such as the use of filters. From a content creation standpoint, I think when we talk about mental health, filters also need moderation. I know we talked about moderation of comments and discussions, but filters as well need moderation, or curating at least, because as we know, filters create this superficial sense of beauty or attractiveness.
Yeah,
and that kind of spirals into most of the mental health challenges that we face these days. So I think thinking about things like these specific tools and features as well is important for senior leadership. I know that the community aspect, the instant messaging aspect is also important, but I think these features itself will become more relevant in the future as well. To the point that was addressed earlier about taking all of these negative challenges and finding the good in them. Filters have been used for good, for example, virtual shopping. So maybe explore that a little bit more versus, the way it has been used negatively or, in a more addictive, toxic kind of angle so far. So just some thought starters, I think, for anyone listening to this.
And I think we do have some questions as well, right? So maybe we should take that and wrap it up.
Let's do that. Okay, so let's sort of look. Alberta says, who decides? Okay. If this is an internal effort, should we not be bringing third parties on board to help find solutions, from one of our audience members? And who decides? Okay. What do we think?
That's always the question of internal versus external audits. I don't think it's gonna work unless in countries like the United States, we have traffic lights and traffic signals, and because everyone follows it, even in the middle of the night when there is even no cars on the road, you will instinctively stop at the red light, even though there is nobody there, because that has to come from inside. So it has to be internal first and external next. That is my opinion. Like external can be is already there, but they are not complying with it, right? So internally, everybody from the top to the bottom has to feel that, and it has to be applied in that realm where you will do the right thing even if nobody's watching you.
That's right. It's a cultural change that we would hope happens across the board. Although we know that when we look at the world, there's so much hate and challenge that it's hard to see the cultural change actually occur. So, who decides? I think the people decide to actually do things differently.
Yes.
It can't be forced, and the corporations tend to just take advantage of whatever they can until they're really pushed to do something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's why organizations like DataEthics4All have an important role to play, right? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, a third-party resource could be us, or a company
Absolutely.
like us, an organization like us. But I think the comment also asks whether this third-party resource should be brought on board to help find a solution. But I think the question really is, even if there are solutions, will the company implement it? Because for them, it's more of a question on, profit and revenue of that solution. And I think with solutions also comes testing. And just that experiment phase of it itself can cost the business millions of dollars, depending on the business, if we're talking about Facebook still. And I think Facebook or companies like Facebook would just be hesitant to take that on board. But still, there's definitely good that can come out of suggesting these solutions, and hopefully Facebook does, take that leap of faith and try out some of these good solutions that are out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's all about cultural change, like those touched upon, right?
Yep.
I mean, we have to draw a fine line. We have to walk this very difficult line where we have to make an ethical choice. It's like everything in life, right? I mean, our parents always said, I'm sure everybody's parents said the same thing, that whenever life gives you a turn, a fork in the road, taking the easy path seems to be shorter and easier right now. And it may seem like not doing the right thing will lead you to greater success in the short run, but then the longer path, the righteous path, may take you longer to get there, but it is the right way to get there. So I think on that note, thank you, my panelists and my leadership team. Thank you so much for this wonderful, inspiring discussion. I'm sure the discussion will continue. We can't solve this in one discussion, but it's the start and very much needed.
Thank you.
And that wraps up our morning session for AI Diet World 2021. Everyone join us again at 4 p.m. today, Pacific time, for the afternoon session of AI Diet World, where Betsy will be keynoting from IBM again. We just heard from Christina, and we'll be hearing more from Betsy. So stay tuned. See you at 4. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you there.
Bye. See you soon. Bye.